Hey everyone, welcome back to another Majora's Mask project making video. We are now up to our 28th mask and the third boss remains mask. So I am excited to say that yes, a few of you guessed it, especially because we're going through the masks and the boss remains in order now. The third boss remains is Gyorg. Gyorg is one of the scarier bosses in Majora's Mask. I think he was probably the hardest boss for me to fight, especially in my very first Majora's Mask playthrough. I just think he's a very difficult boss, very scary. When the cameras change perspective, going underwater to out of the water as you fight him, it does make it a lot more harder, things like that. Also, he's just a big scary fish, so it wasn't really great fun for me. I remember getting very frustrated. I am creating this video about a month after I started the Gyorg mask. I'm happy to say that it is now done. So this is in the future, but we're gonna go back through the process of how I made it, of course. I want to apologize because I took a lot of time to get this one started. I just had a lot of life things come up once again, some health stuff, some other creative projects, some events, some family matters, just life things, and it happens. So I apologize, but also I wanted to keep consistent and keep posting these. So I'm glad to say that we're back, and I am being a little bit more lenient with my time as well to work on the next few masks. We're only 3 masks until the end of the project, so I'm excited to keep going. I might just give myself a few weeks to work on them in between work and things. How I made the mask, of course, I had a mask base. I used foil to do all the sculpting and the molding, and then I covered everything with foam clay. I also wanted to use masking tape and hot glue and even some super glue here and there to just hold things in place, makes it a little bit easier. And then of course do multiple coats of paint and make sure everything comes together. This one will be wearable, it is wearable, but I didn't cut out any eyes to make it see-through because Gyorg has giant fish eyes and I wanted to paint the detail on those rather than prioritize me seeing. Anyway, I don't want to yap for too long. I don't want to hold you guys up from the process making video. This one is a bit of a short one because I didn't record absolutely everything, but I hope you guys enjoying, and without further ado, I'll get to the mask making.
This time, to hold myself accountable, I actually streamed it.
First things first, we're gonna need bulky head part.
As you can see, I had my mask base and I immediately grabbed some foil and started to mold the shape that I wanted to fit on the forehead. I did use a few pieces of foil to try and get the shape right. At this time, I also couldn't find my masking tape, so I just had it sitting there. And then I grabbed my sharp knife and I started to cut a rectangle out around the mouth. I basically wanted to remove the ridges of the lips of the mask base so I can add foil over it and flatten it later. It was a little bit finicky, but I did eventually get to position it right before realizing I also wanted to cover where the nose was. And when I finally found my masking tape, I started to tape down the foil bits that I had sculpted already. This is now me grabbing some more foil bits and covering over the nose using the bottom of the nose on the mask base as a guide. It was ideally where I wanted the mouth of Gyorg to start. I also wanted to give Gyorg a bit of a pointed nose, so you can see me pushing down on the foil a little bit and creating a bit more of a peak at the bottom of the foil mound that I've made. I then once again just taped that all down so it stayed in place. Also, a big thank you to everyone who came to the stream and helped me keep myself accountable. If it wasn't for those guys, I probably would not have finished the mask by now. Now that I was happy with the top half of the face, I wanted to start on the jaw. Gyorg's fish jaw does jut out quite a bit, so what I did was grab some foil and create a base plate. Then I bent down the bottom of the mask base to make it flat and use that as a reference as to how much foil I wanted to add to it. Then I grabbed my hot glue gun and I started to glue it all in place. I also used the glue to kind of seal any gaps between the foil that I may have accidentally left. I also used my phone to zoom in on the camera so you guys could see it up close. before realizing I wanted the jaw to be a little bit longer and jut out just a little bit more. So I grabbed a few more pieces of foil just to get the shape and the length that I wanted. This process was also a lot slower as to when I usually just do it off stream because I was reading chat and I was talking the whole time. The next thing that I did was I wanted to join the top jaw to the bottom jaw, so I grabbed some more foil and created little bridges on the side to connect those to each other. I hot glued those into place, making sure that I shoved any little spare bits of foil in between to close any gaps. And then I copied exactly what I did on the first one and did it to the other side. Gyorg's fish head does have some kind of triangular points behind the jaw, so I did want to use the foil and emulate that as much as possible. I did also think it would be possible to build up on it with foam clay a little bit later, but as always, the goal is to get as close to the structure with the foil as we can each time. At this point, I also realized I wanted to add some little gum bits to the jaw where the teeth would sit on when I added the teeth later. So I rolled up a piece of foil and pressed it to the edges of the bottom jaw and hot glued that down. Because I removed the lips of the mask base before, it was now time to make a flat part on the mask base that would act as the back of the mouth for Gyorg. I grabbed some foil, just rolled it up into a flat piece, and then I hot glued that in place. I pushed it down into any crevices, like inside the gums where I connected that to the bottom jaw, just so everything was kind of smooth. It was then time to start shaping the features on top of Gyorg's head. He has a bump where the fin on the top of his head protrudes from, so I rolled up some foil and I glued that on before using masking tape to just round it out a little bit. I then wanted to shape out the eyes a little bit, so I just got my fingers and I started to press in on the foil that I had already placed on the mask and make little concave crevices where I will add the eyeballs later. I did try my best to get it as symmetrical as possible, and to be honest, I was quite happy with myself. The next part that I realized that the back of Gyorg's head is kind of round, so the next thing that I wanted to do was to add a foil cap to it. I used my own head and I used a bunch of foil and just molded it to the shape of my head before grabbing some masking tape, going around the edges and just making it a little bit more stable. The stronger it is, the better the foam clay sticks to it, and it also means that that part of the head will not concave in. I did test it out a few times just to make sure my head definitely would fit inside once I attach it, and thankfully everything fit. Once I was happy with the shape and stability of that, I did put it to the side and I started to focus a little bit on the features of the face. Gyorg has some eyebrow ridges that kind of protrude out above his eyes, so I rolled up some tiny bits of foil to then add to his eyes. You actually can't see it too well from this point of view. That's mainly because I had to focus on it as much as possible, so I will try and describe it as best that I can. The same time that I made the eyebrows, I also made some tiny little round pieces for the eyes, which I did initially stick down before the foam clay, but just before I covered the whole mask in foam clay, I took them off and coated them separately because I felt like they would protrude better if added on later. So this is me sticking on the eyebrows and also sticking on the eyes into the little concave bits of the mask. It was about now that I decided I was going to add the cap part to the mask, so I lined it up as best as I could and taped it down with some masking tape before using my hot glue gun and gluing it indefinitely in place. Once that was all dry, it was time to start working on the little fin parts that come out of the side of his head. Gyorg has two very long fins that kind of sit halfway up his jaw and go up on a bit of a 45-degree angle on each side of his head. So I grabbed the foil and I rolled it as best as I could, estimated the length that I wanted, but I was pretty happy with it in the end, and then glued it to the side of the face. I made sure to overglue at the bottom and cut off any excess foil that may have been sticking out before grabbing more bits of foil and using the first fin as a reference to create the second fin for the other side of the head. I then tried my best to get it sitting at the right angle. I actually don't think I got the angle right the first try, but I did end up ripping off the fin and fixing it up eventually. I then grabbed more foil to create the fin that sticks out on the top of Gyorg's head. It needed to sit nicely above the cap, but also underneath the initial mask base. Once I was happy with the placement of that, I did use masking tape to hold that in place and also some hot glue. Then it was time to create the rounded bits on the side fins, which I just made a very, very thin sheet of foil. Made it into this sort of shape. It's kind of like a quarter of a circle, if that makes sense. I then made a second one for the other side, and then I lined it up and I hot glued those onto the big fins and also on the inside of the mask. I do want to say this is probably the most foil I have used on one of the masks. It's such a big fish head and has so many features that had to be made out of foil. I'm genuinely surprised we didn't go through the whole roll. Once the first round part of the fin was attached on one side, I then did the exact same thing on the other side. There's also no such thing as too much hot glue. It's better to make sure that everything is held in place, especially once the foam clay goes on later, because as I said in other videos, the weight of the foam clay can also alter the appearance of the mask, squishing and misshaping the foil sometimes. So make sure everything is relatively strong. Now that the fins on Gyorg's head was done, I was just rolling up some tiny little cone-shaped bits of foil because Gyorg has some spikes along the bridge of his nose, well, bump on his head because he doesn't really have a nose. And then I once again hot glued those down. Lastly, I made some extra little cone pieces that I wanted to use as the teeth. I made 4 in total, 2 big ones and 2 small ones. But I ended up realizing a bit later that the big ones were too big and only ended up using the small ones. This is a close-up of all the foil details, safely glued down. And now it was time for foam clay. The first thing that I wanted to do was foam clay the back of the mouth, as it was the hardest to get to, the teeth that I made separately, and the horns because I wanted to build up over it. The next day, once those details were dry, I used the rest of the foam clay and covered the entire mask. I gave that about 24 to 36 hours to dry completely, and it was time to add more features. I added the little teeth, the eyes, the lines along the sides of the fins, and the eyebrows. Like I said, I didn't record everything, but I started to paint. I used a dark blue for most of the features and then some orange for the ends of the fins and the cap. I wasn't happy with the initial colors though, so I did remix them for the other coats and then went over with some lighter shades to add more details. I used a yellowy cream color for the teeth and then went over with some eyeshadow to highlight the light blue parts and make the teeth look dirty. Then lastly, I went back with foam clay and added the extra spikes and extra little fin on the bottom of the mouth. Once that was dry, I then did a couple of coats of paint underneath, making sure the fin matched the other fins. And when the paint was completely dry, I then used some more makeup just to give it a little bit more shine. Now that all the details were complete and I was liking the way that the mask had come together, it was time to see whether it fits. With the weight of the foam clay pushing down on the foil cap, I was worried it would squish in a little bit, but it actually still fit nicely on my head. I was just still gentle because I didn't want to damage it. And that is Gyorg done. Please let me know if you like how Gyorg's mask turned out. Feel free to subscribe if you want to follow along with the project. And let me know in the comments which mask you would like to see next. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye bye!